Hi, in this video, we're going to create an iridescent chrome text effect in Adobe Photoshop. To get started, create a new document with dimensions of 1920 by 1080 pixels. Set the resolution to 300 pixels per inch, the color mode to RGB at 8-bit, the background color to black, and the color profile to sRGB. Then click Create. Next, add a new layer. Activate the Type tool and choose your font. In this example, we're using Old London Regular. Set the font size to 170 points and the color to black. Type the text on the canvas. Then center it by selecting all using the Control A on Windows or Command A on Mac. Activate the Move tool and click the Align Horizontal and Vertical Centers icons. Press Ctrl D or Command D to deselect. Then, convert the text layer to a smart object. Add a gradient overlay style to the text. Set the first gradient color to 86878B at location 0, the second color to white at location 50, and the third color to a 9A9A9 at location 100. Click OK, then apply the remaining settings. Open the blending options, set the fill opacity to 0, and click OK. Now, duplicate the text layer by pressing Ctrl J or Command J. For clarity, rename the first text layer to Chrome Gradient. Remove the gradient style from the duplicate and rename it Bottom White. Add a bevel and emboss style. Set the style to inner bevel, the technique to smooth, and the depth to 200%. Set the direction to up, the size to 35, and soften to 15. Adjust the shading to 90 and 10. Set the gloss contour to linear. Change the highlight mode to screen, white, with 55% opacity, and the shadow mode to multiply, black, with 20% opacity. Activate the contour with linear and set the range to 100%. Then click OK. Next, duplicate the text layer again and rename it Magenta. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the depth to 170, the size to 60, and soften to 15. Adjust the shading to 90 and 5. Set the gloss contour to Cone Inverted, the highlight mode to CC33CC with linear dodge at 75% opacity, and the shadow mode to multiply, black, with 20% opacity. Change the contour to ring double with a range of 100%. Duplicate the text layer again and rename it Bottom Brown. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the depth to 315, the size to 16, and soften to 16. Adjust the shading to 85 and 20. Set the gloss contour to Rounded Steps, the highlight mode to linear dodge, white, with 100% opacity, and the shadow mode to multiply, 895000, with 65% opacity. Change the contour to linear with a range of 100%. Make another duplicate and rename it Gray. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the depth to 850, the size to 40, and soften to 5. Adjust the shading to 85 and 50. Set the gloss contour to Ring Double, the highlight mode to linear dodge, white, with 100% opacity, and the shadow mode to multiply, black, with 75% opacity. Change the contour to Ring Double with a range of 50%. Duplicate the text layer again and rename it White. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the gloss contour to Rounded Steps. Set the highlight mode to linear dodge, white, with 100% opacity, and the shadow mode to multiply, black, with 75% opacity. Change the contour to Ring Double with a range of 50%. Next, duplicate the layer again and rename it Orange. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the depth to 750, the size to 45, and soften to 10. Adjust the shading to -85 and 55. Set the gloss contour to cone inverted, the highlight mode to linear dodge, FFB 873, with 80% opacity, and the shadow mode opacity to 0%. Change the contour to cone inverted with a range of 80%. Duplicate the text layer again and rename it Top Brown. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the size to 55 and soften to 10. Adjust the shading to 85 and 65. Set the highlight mode to linear dodge, 72C08, with 75% opacity, and keep the shadow mode at 0% opacity. Change the contour to cone inverted with a range of 45%. Duplicate the layer again and rename it Blue. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the depth to 75, the size to 40, and soften to 5. Adjust the shading to 90 and 55. Set the gloss contour to cone inverted, then edit the curve, and set the tip position about a quarter down from the top. Change the highlight mode to linear dodge, 0084FF, with 100% opacity, and the shadow mode to multiply, black, with 85% opacity. Change the contour to cone inverted and edit the curve by moving the tip position to the center. Set the range amount to 50%. Duplicate the text layer again and rename it Black. Open the Layer Style dialog box and change the depth to 280, the size to 50, and soften to 5. Adjust the shading to 95 and 45. Set the gloss contour to rolling slope descending. Set the highlight mode opacity to 0% and the shadow mode to multiply, black, with 100% opacity. Change the contour to the default cone inverted with a range of 30%. Next, duplicate the text layer again and rename it Stroke. Open the Layer Style dialog box, activate the stroke effect, and set the size to 3. Position it outside. Set the blend mode to normal and the opacity to 100%. Set the fill type to gradient, with the first gradient color as 86878A at location 0, and the second as D4D5, D6 at location 100. Ensure both opacity stops are set to 100%. Change the style to linear, set the angle to 90, and the scale to 100%. Open the Bevel and Emboss dialog box and deactivate the contour. Change the style to Stroke Emboss, the size to 3, and soften to 3. Adjust the shading to 90 and 60. Set the gloss contour to cone, the highlight mode to linear dodge, white, with 100% opacity, and the shadow mode to multiply, black, with 100% opacity. Click OK. Now, select all text layers, group them, and rename the group Iridescent. Add a satin effect to the group, set the color to ABABAB. Opacity to 50%, angle to 90, distance to 15, size to 55, and contour to ring double. Check both anti-aliased and invert boxes, then confirm. Next, we're going to add shiny flares to the text. Add a new empty layer at the top and rename it Flares. Activate the brush tool and select the Lens Flare Brush preset. If you don't have one, you can create a flare brush from scratch by following the tutorial linked in the description. Use the square bracket keys to adjust the brush size to around 100 to 150. Then place the flares around the shiny parts of the image. Adjust the opacity as needed. 75% should work well. Finally, create another duplicate of the text layer and move it to the top. Rename it Placeholder. Remove the effects and set both fill and opacity to 0%. So every time you need to change the text, double-click the placeholder layer icon. Edit the text in the new window. Then press Ctrl S on Windows or Command S on Mac to save. Close the window, and the text will update without affecting the iridescent chrome effect. If you change the text, you may need to reposition or recreate the flares to match the new text. That's how you create an iridescent chrome text effect in Photoshop. If you enjoyed this tutorial, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome tutorials. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.